logging file output. Firstly, we need to create a file. It will be the exact same procedure as the FileWriter class or the FileOutputStream class. Remember, we would write FileWriter, writer equal new FileWriter, and then pass the name, and then it will appear in the root directory of the project. This will be the exact same procedure, but instead of using FileWriter or FileOutputStream, we will use FileHandler instead. That is the only difference. FileHandler, we will call this file is equal to new FileHandler, or we can use this one, and you will see why I chose the append boolean value, though you can probably infer its functionality from the name append. Let us create the name of the file. We can call it tutorial.log, like so. This of course requires an exception because it is related to files. Files always rely on IO or file not found exceptions. Obviously, we need to use the try catch block or try with resources block. We should never use the Zahi way for exception handling, but for convenience and swiftness, we will not resort to that. After that, we will add the handler to our logger. Now we can write to the file using these methods, either the .log or the .info, .severe, .warning, blah 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 blah. Logger dot let us config file created. Now let us execute this and see what happens. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As you can see, the file has been created successfully. We do not need to flush, obviously. Now if we test this here, you will see that it is in the format of XML, which is rather annoying. Let me see if this plugin will help. But we notice that the message that was supposed to be logged has not been logged. Why do you think that is? Well, let us test with this and see what happens. File.setLevel level.all. Now let us test it and see. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let me delete this and create it again. Obviously nothing will appear because I am not using the console handler. I am using the file handler here. And again, nothing appeared. Oh, I know why. I forgot to set the level of the logger itself. It is a bit annoying, but once you understand the mechanism, it becomes simplistic, thankfully, alhamdulillah. Set level to level.config. Okay, now it should work bi'ithnillah, God willing. Let us run this again. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We have a different output, as you can see here. You have the date, you have milliseconds, nanoseconds. I do not know why this is important. The name of the logger, the level, the class from which the logger is logging, and the method from which the logger is logging. how many threads available and the message that we passed here. Now, if we change this to logger, let us see if it will change this one. Okay, and let us run this again and see the output. There it is. Obviously, you will not see a log in XML. At least I have never seen a logger with XML as the output, mainly because it is, what did I delete? Mainly because it is difficult for people to read. At least for me personally, I should say. It is difficult for me to read. File, log file creation. And what else did I want to add? What did I want to add? This one right here. So this will be file output. By default, it will obviously be the file handler, and by default, it will utilize the XML formatter. There was another matter I wished to discuss. Simple formatter. Okay. Sorry, hold on, I have to take this. I will be right back. Apologies for that, I have returned. Before we end, I have 2 more points to discuss, and then we can end this, or rather, I will create a class quickly, show you how we can instantiate a logger in a class other than the driver class, and then how we can call the logger from that class within the main method, and that will be the end of it. Here, what I wish to state is the default logging level for FileHandler, and that is fine. That is the default FileHandler level. That is the first point. The second point is, what if you wish to change the output format here? Instead of using the XML formatter, what if you wish to use the SimpleFormatter? You can simply do so by setting the formatter for the FileHandler. New SimpleFormatter. We can pass it as an anonymous object to serve the purpose we need. Then we can run this and see. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is much easier to read than the XML format, though the XML format obviously contains more information, but this is neater. Again, it would depend on the nature of your project. Before I forget, last point, and then we can move on to creating a class. Watch what happens if I create a new logging method. Logger.info FileHandler formatter has been changed to SimpleFormatter. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Before we begin, remember this is the current output. Now let us see what happens if I execute this. Oh man, it is displaying it to the... Oh, okay, so it is displaying it here as well. Well, in case you have any issues with the file being overwritten, you can simply use true here, pass true, and whenever you create a new log, it will be added to the file here, but it seems that it is true by default, or so it would seem. I thought you actually needed to use true, but it seems that you do not need to use true. But just in case you encounter any issues, you can set it to true. The reason this appeared is because this is set to info, so it functions for both the file formatter and the console formatter as well. By default, obviously. If this was fine, it would not appear here. And just to test it, let us test it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. See, it did not appear. Ah, okay. Perhaps it is related to the console handling. Now if I apply this true, append to true, config file created. Oh, because I have this set to set to config. I apologize for that. But here we have two config levels. Now when I run this again, this should be added. And there you have it. Now quickly, I will create a new class and create the logger there, just to show you how you can call the logger from a different method. You probably know what you need to do by now, but in case you have any doubt or disbelief, I will call this student, and here it will be private because we will not be referring to the actual logger object. It will be final. You can also set it to static if you want. I have seen people use static, and you will see how we can use it in just a moment. The data type is logger. Logger is the name of the object, equal to logger dot get logger. Then we pass in either a name of our own or the name of the class dot get name. Then we will create a method, public get logs, for example. Oh, I forgot to add void, the return type. And here we can create FileHandler. File is equal to new FileHandler. We will name it students.log, true, in case we need to add to it again. Add the stupid method signature. Then logger dot add handler file. Let us actually set the formatter to simple because it is easier to read, at least for the purposes of this demonstration. And also let us not forget to set the level to all in case we need a degree of freedom. Then we actually set the level. Let us say level.config. I need to pass it with uppercase letters. And finally, logger dot config file. We can say student log file created, like so. Now, how can we use the logger from this method? You probably know what we need to do by now. So I will delete all of this. We no longer need it. Now, obviously, to access this method, we need to instantiate an object, or if we set it to static, we simply need to use the name of the class, student.getLogs. This is how we indirectly access the logger. Remember, you never access the object itself. Outside of the class it is logging from. If we execute this, we should hopefully see this file created here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Beautiful. And that is it for this video. Firstly, I apologize for the constant interruptions related to the issue of the logging level, but I learned, thankfully, and I was able to relay my knowledge to you, which is the purpose of these videos. I hope this, and secondly, this will be the end of the beginner level. The next episode, bi'idhnillah and God willing, will cover the project. It is obviously optional, but if you wish to practice, I would highly recommend tackling the project. If you do not wish to tackle it, that is your prerogative. I hope this lecture was helpful and beneficial to you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Be safe, take care, and peace be upon you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد.